This is Arthur's Seat, a whacking great hill in the middle of Scotland's capital.
It's packed with history, at least 7,000 years of it human, legends, and the odd spooky story.
It's a scheduled monument and a site of special scientific interest. So let's go and have a look. The first thing you notice that's a bit unusual, you can see peeking out between Holyrood Palace and the Scottish Parliament. These are Salisbury Crags. In the 18th century, during a period of scientific advances known as the Enlightenment, James Hutton, the man widely regarded as the father of modern geology, came here and studied these rocks. Hutton believed that we could tell how the world was formed by studying the rocks around us, and he did it right here. So this place is kind of the bedrock of modern geology. I'm not even sorry.
What you can see is the result of a volcanic eruption that occurred around 340 million years ago, give or take.
The lava at the centre cooled, and glaciers in the Ice Age did all the rest.
And while we know quite a lot about that, we've no idea why it's called Arthur's Seat.
It's possible that it was something to do with King Arthur, or a giant called Arthur. It might be a corruption of Ardness said, meaning something like the height of arrows. One thing's for sure though, you can see it from all around. Fife, East Lothian. It looks like a giant sleeping lion from a distance.
It's 251 metres tall, but Robert Louis Stevenson described it as a hill for magnitude, a mountain in virtue of its bold design.
This is one of my favourite things in the park. This is St Anthony's Chapel, or at least we think it is. As a matter of fact, we don't know what it was for, but there are a couple of clues. We know the Pope paid for repairs in 1426, which suggests it was religious and it was a bit tired even then. It's in a prominent position. It's very close to Holyrood Abbey, just over there. There was a path between the two, and its position means it would have been visible to pilgrims sailing up the Forth. It might have been a marker for them, or a place for them to stay, out of the way of the Abbey, where the real hardcore monking went on. I like the mystery though. After all, St Anthony is the patron saint of lost things.
Though it might also be another St Anthony. It's around a half-hour walk from the car park at Holyrood to the summit. And as you walk the path, you can see how the volcanic eruption and the glacial movement shape not only the park, but the city itself. People have lived up there since prehistoric times, and you can see the evidence if you know where to look.
And if you look over there behind me, you can see there is actual sunshine on Leith. So the only slight problem with Arthur's Seat is similar to the slight problem that the rest of Edinburgh has. It's kind of a victim of its own success. I'm not really helping the problem, I realise that, but sometimes best to come first thing in the morning. I've climbed Arthur's Seat quite a few times now, with my family, on my own, with friends. Hey Jackster, how'd you feel?
Good.
It's the perfect place to come if you want to make your problems smaller or your ego bigger. Because when you're up here, everything looks smaller, but you could fool yourself into believing that you ruled the world, even with hair like this. The next stop is over there, Dunsapie Hill, and one we can maybe see.
And this is the point in the video where things went kind of a bit wrong.
So yeah, my camera ran out of battery. My phone ran out of battery, my gimbal ran out of battery, the thing that stabilises the phone, and I think I'd pretty much run out of battery as well by the time the lights went out. So a couple of days and one fairly decisive haircut later, I decided to come back. Obviously I climbed to the top. You can't come here and not do that. Well, you can come here and not do that, but you kind of want to do that whenever you come here. When my kids see this video, they're going to be raging, but they weren't up this morning. So I came here early. I had the place to myself for probably about a minute. Managed to stand on the trig point, and yeah, for context, it was about 8:45 by the time I got to the top, so not ludicrously early, and it is the Easter weekend, so busy weekend for the city and tourism, but still relatively quiet. So this is Dunsapie Hill, finally.
This is the place where you can see some of the evidence of the people that have gone before.
And on a map, and probably from the air, you can clearly see the outline of a fort. I'm doing my best, I'm not an archaeologist, but there are kind of rampart type shapes around here. And they were excavated in the last couple of years. It's thought they date to around 400 BC, so a good while before the Romans turned up. But over there behind me on the side of Crow Hill, you can see agricultural terraces where it's thought Bronze Age people farmed crops. But no one knows for sure because no one's had the chance to look. They found flint tools here dating back 7,000 years, and it's thought that these hill forts were home to the Votadini, or who the Romans called the Votadini, who were the local tribe. They're possibly the same people that appear in a Welsh poem, Y Gododdin, which dates back to around 600 AD. In the poem, the Gododdin, a band of warriors, feast for a year in their castle and then go out to fight. They all die in battle somewhere near Catterick in North Yorkshire. There's even a mention of a warrior called Arthur. It's a pretty short mention, something like Arthur was there too, but it has led some to speculate that this could be Camelot.
My favourite Arthur's Seat story though is about the Coffin dolls.
In 1836, some boys were up here hunting for rabbits, and they found a bit more than they were expecting. No one's quite sure where, possibly on this side of the park, but they found the entrance to a cave covered over with slate. When they removed the slate, inside they found it had been shelved. They found 17 tiny coffins with 17 tiny bodies inside. Over the years, some of them have disappeared into private collections, but you can still see 8 of them in the National Museum of Scotland. No one knows who made them or what they were for. There's been a lot of speculation down the years. They've even appeared in an Ian Rankin novel. Some think they could be kind of creepy voodoo dolls or symbolic burials of sailors lost at sea. It's thought they did start out as toy soldiers. Another theory is that they linked to the anatomy murders. Between 1827 and 1828, William Burke and William Hare murdered 17 people. I mentioned the Enlightenment earlier on, and a big part of that was advances in medical science. Bodies were needed for dissection. Body snatching was rife, with doctors willing to pay for freshly interred corpses. If you had enough money, you could pay a guard to stand over your earthly remains with a blunderbuss, or you could have yourself placed in a mort safe until you were suitably decomposed that you weren't much use as a specimen. Burke and Hare, though, decided to short-circuit the process and just murder people. It was a scandal that rocked the city and the nation, and later it led to the Anatomy Act, allowing people to donate their body to medical science. The dolls themselves looked to have been made with cobbler's tools, and William Burke was a trained cobbler, but the day the last of the 17 bodies was found, they were arrested, which didn't give him much time. Maybe it was another cobbler who knew Burke and felt guilty by association. Maybe the dolls are cursed. Who knows?
But now I was up here with a little bit more time on my hands.
I've got just enough battery life left to show you something a little bit special.
Just down the steps, on the other side of Arthur's Seat, is Duddingston Village. It's a conservation village and home to the Sheephead Inn, said to be Scotland's oldest pub, dating back to 1360. The church dates back to at least the 12th century, and just next door is something worth seeing.
This is Dr. Neil's garden. There were actually 2 Dr. Neils, a married couple, both of them GPs, and they began work on this garden in 1963. It's hidden away in Duddingston Village, and it's an awesome place to come.
The doctors grew medicinal plants here and created somewhere you can just relax and switch off from the modern world. If it wasn't quite so cold, you'd be forgiven for thinking you were in Tuscany. I'll be back next week with a video about my favourite place in the world.
No pressure. Hopefully see you then.